Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another inspiring conversation. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Bonsai Shongwe, a dynamic leader whose influence extends across ministry, business, investment, authorship, and public speaking. Bonsai has dedicated his life to helping people discover their purpose, strengthen their faith, and build impactful lives that honor God while creating value in the world. His journey is a powerful example of how faith and leadership can work together to transform communities and inspire generations. In this conversation, we'll explore his story, the lessons he's learned along the way, his vision for kingdom enterprises, and how individuals can pursue success without losing their spiritual foundation. Bonsai, it's truly an honor to have you with us today. Welcome and thank you for joining the conversation. How are you?
Finally, we make it happen, Sid. It's more than a pleasure. It's an honor. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
sorry. Yeah, I know I've been harassing you for so long.
Yeah, so it's good.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Bonsai, can you please tell me your journey spans ministry, entrepreneurship, investing, authorship, and public speaking. How did God shape your calling, and what was some of the defining moments that led you to where you are today?
Wow, they're a couple. I think the first one is the family I grew up in. I was born those days back then, half a century ago. You used to have. I was born at an Assemblies, International Assemblies of God, little church mission house. And so my parents obviously meant that I got introduced to the faith early. My mom was my Sunday school teacher, so we just walk out the house, just around the same house, walk in that side, and she's my Sunday school teacher. Then we walk out of that, just around the building, and she's my mom. And so I think that gave me a very early um, um, introduction to the faith that grounds me, and so that was one of the first things. And at the same time, my dad was later on, and my mom soon after that were entrepreneurs, and I think that kind of got me interested in just learning about how to, first of all, being comfortable without a job, right?
Oh,
So to I have, I have the exposure to not being afraid of 30 days, right? Because that I know is the big jump that for makes it difficult for people to step into building businesses, and that is that you've got to lose the fear of 30 days for many people. So that helped me to when I dreamt about the future, to not think, oh, when do I get someone to pay me in 30 days, and to think, what do I build? And so I think that exposure to my parents first gave me the faith to do things, but also the understanding the faith, so that I then ended up doing everything that I did. So I think defining moment is parents, what I read, the people I was surrounded by, also because you tend to read what your friends read too, because they sort of tell you what they think or just read, and then you go check it as well. And I grew up in that time in South Africa around. When I say grew up, I mean getting into the world of work and activity was around that time of the early 2000s, and there was quite a lot of positivity in the country, and so I found that also my friends, who most were at youth and things like that, we used to listen to guys like David Molapo, Abna Mariri, when we were in our youth, who really inspired us. So I was also surrounded by many people who were doing building businesses and creating value. And so I think that that's a defining moment for me too. Besides, yeah, other things we'll talk about as we continue.
Awesome. Many people struggle to balance their faith with their professional ambitions. How can individuals pursue success in business while remaining grounded in biblical principles?
Yeah, it. I that's a very good question, because I can relate to many people having that struggle to balance. and on my part, I don't balance the two, because what there are two ways to do it. Is to sort of think, I'm a believer in one hand, but I'm also a businessman on the other hand. You better understand, every now and then I take off one mask and put on the other mask. I think how I believe the best way to do it. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were asking me about, because in the early 2000s I went into the music industry, and
Mhm.
and not even gospel music, contemporary music, um, and and we had, quite a bit of we got some stuff done. We had a bit of success there, and so I was talking to someone the other time, and they were saying, "Man, how did you come into that industry as a young 20-year-old boy, and you already had big guns there, and you were only in that industry for a decade, but you really went after the big guns and beat them on certain years. Um, However, you came out of that industry untouched, still a believer even more than you were before." And so we're talking about that, and I was telling them that, what the difference is, I have never been in the music business. I've always been in kingdom business. It's just was operating in music at that point, right? So it's that seek first, meaning it's not about balance two things, but it's to bring all your activity as an expression of your faith. Then there's nothing to balance, because whether I'm conquering in business, or um, or on my knees praying, it's the same activity. I'm doing an activity in pursuit of the glory of God and His influence and kingdom on earth. So it's once you move it out of having to balance it, I think it brings so much peace, and takes much less energy, because you're not trying to serve two gods and making sure you don't upset either of them, but you're serving one God in two places.
You often speak about purpose-driven leadership. What does true leadership look like from a kingdom perspective, and how can people discover their God-given purpose?
Yeah, sure. So I actually find that fewer people struggle with, and we say it all the time, fewer people struggle with discovering their purpose
Mhm.
than trusting their all so obvious purpose, right? So it kind of takes me back to Moses. If you think of when you look at his purpose, right? His purpose is to take them out of Egypt, take the Hebrew children, the Israelites, out of Egypt, and clearly just to the gate of the promised land. Um, and what's really interesting about that is, when you really look at it, first of all, he has the most interesting history of being an Israelite, but who's fully educated in Egyptian ways, right? So he's both. And you look at the history as well, he's also the guy who always wanted to bring that nation together. You look at him, he's a guy with a history of having a staff. It wasn't a holy, you know, from heaven staff. He had the staff because that's the gig he did, right? He was a shepherd, and you tend to have a staff so you can drag the sheep if they're not, if you ever need to use, if you ever need to. And so what you find is there are so many obvious things around him, which if you spoke to Moses back then, he'd be like, yeah, yeah, I did go to school in Egypt. Yeah, yeah, I do have a staff, right? um, and if you realize what God did with him, it was more. And if you asked him 3 days before, do you know that this staff in your hand is gonna be the most famous staff throughout history for centuries to come? You'd have said, you mean my stick? Like, no, I carry this like everybody does. And I think what's really important for people is to not downplay the staff that could split the Red Sea and, well, also strike a rock and get water out of it when you should be speaking to it. But that will part the Red Sea. Uh, the history of being educated in Egypt and yet being an Israelite, um, which, if you speak to most people and go to talk about their passions, their abilities, their unique histories, their personality, their experiences, the difficulty that most people have is to just trust that just because they're boring to you doesn't mean they're boring to history, doesn't mean they're boring to destiny, doesn't mean they're boring to God, and that God actually wants to use the good old boring stuff about yourself that you've always known and you take it for granted. But that is what that is where your purpose is found. And I find that the big issue is that we kind of struggle to trust what we already are, what we already have, what we already do naturally. And actually you discover your purpose when you realize, just because it's boring to you doesn't mean it won't save thousands of lives.
That's really fascinating. As an entrepreneur and investor, what are the biggest lessons you've learned about building sustainable businesses that honor God and serve communities?
Yeah, I think because we've just spoken about purpose, I think it's it's keeping your eye on the price. The main thing being to keep the main thing the main thing. And and so maybe I'd give three things for entrepreneurs. Number one is to always be clear on, and to never think of a business as a money making machine primarily, but to think, let me put it like this: the business people who chase money don't tend to make much.
Okay.
And 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 I will be justifying it next. They don't tend to make much, and if they do, it doesn't tend to be sustainable. And if they do sustain it, they become the most horrible people, that they hate that they have to live with this person in their own body. Okay, so So it's got to be first, and I think you already said it in your question, that it's got to be purpose. It's got to be clear. You got to think of business as, who do I serve and what do I deliver to them, right? And then you've got to have all your stakeholders. Number one for me in any business in any business pursuit is, my first stakeholder is God. And then I say, okay, so what do I provide for him? Okay, then let's go to the next one. And it's probably my customer. And what do I deliver to them? But to get absolutely and precisely clear, clarity is so powerful. And then, see all the stakeholders and be absolutely clear who they are and what you're going to provide to them. And it's amazing that having that clarity has so much power and so much force. And number two, then, once you are very clear about that, then you to do well in I think, if I can say something about it, but to do well in building entities and investment is to get delivered from money. And and now we've got to hear this clearly, because there are two sides to this that I'm not saying. So to get delivered from money, I don't, first of all, means the greed that makes you want to use money to replace needs that money can never replace. And so you've got to get delivered from that. Money's just got to be what it is, a tool, right? So I use a cell phone. It's a tool, a laptop. I don't wake up thinking about cell phones and phones, except when I need to call or do something. But to also get delivered, but on the other side, so how you delivered from money is, you don't run after it, but you also don't badmouth it or feel shame or guilt around money, because that also needs deliverance, right? If money is a sensitive topic for you, you probably fall on that side. And just because it's on the negative side does not mean it's still not driven by money, right? So to just get delivered from money and be able to then do your purpose and be able to look and say, okay, how do I do it profitably? Not because I absolutely need it, but because if it's not profitable, I won't fulfill my mission. And I think for entrepreneurs, investors, you'll do quite well when you are completely impassionate about money, because otherwise you'll chase everything. So to be able to let a deal go if it doesn't align with who I want to serve and what I want to give them, right? So you can't say, oh, this will make me 10 times. I'm not interested. It's not fulfilling purpose first. And yet, when I pursue purpose, I don't have no qualms with making it profitable. And yeah, I talk about grass, trees, life, money, God, friends. It's it shouldn't have that charge, because that charge reflects an issue in the heart that needs to be set right.
Are you in a way are you in a way advocating for conscious capitalism?
Conscious capitalism?
Yeah, are you in a way advocating for that?
No, I'm not advocating for anything. So yeah, but the thing is, because you used a specific term, what often happens with specific terms is they then develop a history and um, um, a a history, and then they develop a connotation, and they, it's like, do you align with them or them?
Mm.
um so if we strip what you've just said of any connotations and just go with the dictionary only, I think that's an amazing summary of what I've just said.
Awesome. The concept of kingdom enterprises is gaining momentum. How would you define a kingdom enterprise, and what practical steps can aspiring entrepreneurs take to build one?
Yeah. It's interesting. It has been picking up, and it's just been showing up in various places. And I think what's really powerful about it is that many believers have thought that my faith is from 10 to 12 on a specific day, and otherwise I'm in the real world. And 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 now realizing that no, God hasn't called us to one building. God's called us to operating in the world, including when we go to where we gather with believers and pray and serve God, and that's important. And actually is quite a strong foundation for everything else. I think what I would tell young entrepreneurs is what I kind of said. um, and I think there are a couple of things I would advise: get mentors.
Mhm.
um, your number one. Someone was asking me, not a long time ago, was asking me how many books am I reading at a time, and how much do I read. And um, and I answered them, and I thought afterwards, I should have answered not what I'm reading, but how I read. And and the reason for that is I would say to kingdom entrepreneurs: number one, fear the Dunning-Kruger effect more than you do lack of knowledge, right? um, and what that would do, and the Dunning-Kruger effect is where you think you know what's going on when you actually don't. And usually, how do you know that you know what's going on? By results. And that's why entrepreneurship is such a tough thing for many people, because it's a tough world that answers you with
Mm.
numbers and rands and cents. Very unkind space,
Mm.
right?
That's true.
Um, it tells you, it tells you how many units did you sell today. And the reason why many people don't go into entrepreneurship is because it's that rough, right?
Mm.
Your business looks at you at the end of the day and says, nobody's interested in what you just sold them. And you've got to go, when most people will just go, ouch, and run away. So, which is the second thing, is you've got to be grounded in your faith and be able to to push through those obstacles, and to push through and be able to just keep an open mind and still stay curious, keep learning, keep asking questions. But many of those struggles could actually be cut short by mentorship. And some mentors, you can have them in person, because you get to meet them, they mentor you, they ask questions, they help you. But one of the ways that I found you can do with mentorship is, if you find someone that seems to understand something because the results say so. It's not so much read or hear them, but it's how you read. Don't look for what they're saying. Really try and get where they come from, and that really helps. But basically, for kingdom entrepreneurs, is, man, you better be established in what you believe, because at the end of the day, the one thing that will never fall apart is God's love for you, and if you can be grounded in that, well, then you can push through, and you can only succeed.
Powerful. Young people today face challenges ranging from economic uncertainty to identity struggles. What advice would you give the next generation about finding direction, confidence, and purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know there's a song that said something like, if we ever needed the Lord before, we sure do need him now. And I would say to young people, you guys need God more than we did, and we did more than our parents did. Um, and I'm obviously speaking loosely, but I would really advise young people to really plug in, and to realize this, that your decisions at 18 really affect your life at 60. So to not downplay the decisions that you're making now, because you have time to make decisions, and to realize that actually, because there is a there's a very popular excuse that people make, and I'll give it to you. Number one
Mhm.
is, I'm too young. Number two is, I'm too old. Right? So you have normally, when you speak to young people, you find them saying, I'm too young, I'll make the decision later when I'm older.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then you speak to old people, they say, I'm too old now. And one of the things I used to to always comment about is how many people who would say, oh, we need Bonsai to come in because he's very inspirational, so he can talk to the youth. Right? Very common thing. And it sounds good,
Yeah.
and it sounds
Mm.
reasonable, and it sounds normal.
Mm.
And
That's true.
I always would comment and say, why the youth? Why inspiring the youth? Because the youth are going to end up like you. So maybe the question we should be asking is, are you an inspired 70-year-old? Because if youth have an inspired granddad, trust me, not very long, they're going to do whatever granddad's doing. So, how about we cancel all motivational speakers to the youth and send them to the 70-year-olds, right? So, but I'm just showing the excuse because I
Mm.
had the privilege of meeting, um, and I'm saying this because then I come back to the youth. I had the privilege of meeting a gentleman who ran, I forgot what that company is, Swiss Guard, a piece of it, but I met him and he was a chairperson. He was 94, I think, some age like that, and he was chairperson because he really wasn't doing much anymore, but he still wanted to come to work. And I spoke to him, and he told me a story because I was about to speak across the nation to their people. And so he brought me into his office. He was supposed to brief me, but as a senior citizen would, he just told me his story for an hour and a half. But he had started his company like KFC at with his pension fund, and was now running this huge network marketing firm. And so what he told me, he said to me, man, because I was like, wow, man, you started at that age. And he says to me, man, I started doing, I've had this mindset from when I was young till now. So I would say to the young people, Don't use age as an excuse because you're young. Let no one despise your youth, and start planning your future now and acting on it now, because you're not too young, just like no one's too old. Everyone is exactly the right age to take responsibility for their lives.
Faith is
Yeah.
often tested during yeah, faith is often tested during seasons of failure, loss, or uncertainty. Can you share a personal experience where a difficult season ultimately strengthens your faith and vision?
Yeah. Wow. I've got a couple of those. Let's see which one we pick. Um, uh, I finished high school, started working, went and studied chemical engineering, which was awesome because you learn about process in equals out. Okay. Um, did chemical engineering, and then after that decided I'm pursuing a purpose driven life. And I remember I went to then study music, and because I decided, okay, I'm going to build a, 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 a top 10 record company in South Africa. um, and so, well, actually at that time I just wanted to be a top producer, music producer. I was looking at Babyface in America, and I was like, I'm going to be South Africa's Babyface. And and so so you can imagine there's that difficulty about leaving the clear beaten path, knowing what your salary will be on day one as a chemical engineer, and going to uncertainty with music. And and so I remember going to school, um, and starting my new music course now. And then there were issues at home, and I'm now at school and money dipped. I've lost a place to stay, and all I had to do was, and so I remember there was a short time that I slept in the piano room, um, secretly too,
Oh,
because that's for practice. And I was faced with a decision between just pack up this dumb vision of yours, this stupid dream of yours, and go back home. Um, and of course, I'd be welcome at home. But they calling me and like, are you okay? You know what's happening here. This is all we can do. What do we do? But hey, there is a bed you know, there is a bed and food at home. They don't say that, but that's the reality. And so it was one of those times that literally I've gone to find myself being homeless, um, no budget at school, and I either drop all of this and just admit defeat and go home, or I'm gonna just push forward. And I think for me, that's one time when my faith was tested, in terms of, do I believe that I am who God says I am, when the circumstance is saying, you are sleeping in a piano room? When everything around you, when how I feel, when circumstances, when it's like, sleeping in the piano room is not something that most people are proud of,
mm,
especially because, yeah, because I'm only sleeping, and I'm not even allowed to, but it's like, well, what's my option? The street, right? I'm allowed to go in and practice, but then I'll just practice until they lock. And then just sleeping there and woke up and my eyes are swollen and it's all of that. So I mean that's attacking my very core sense of who I am, my dignity and everything. And I think for me that was the biggest test of, are you able to get up there and say I am what God's word says I am? Uh, if God doesn't think that's what I am, then fine. I'll have anyone else, including myself, uh, feeling like anything else, but I'll go with who God says I am. And I think it's those moments that test your faith, but also that just strengthen your faith, because I stuck with it and um, finished my course, came back, did music, and went through tests that I could also overcome because I overcome that one. And so I don't think by 2010, when my record company was in the top 5 in the country, um, it mattered that at some day I was literally a piano room homeless man for a couple of weeks. It didn't matter then because that paid off. In fact, some of the songs that I composed at that time were in the top 5
Wow.
on all the the Metro FMs, the largest stations in the country, and are still generating royalties till today. So if that encourages anyone, I want to say never stop believing God's word, no matter how rough stuff gets, because in that test there's also the blessing for the future.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. As an author and speaker, what message do you believe the world needs most right now? And how can individuals become agents of positive change in their families, workplaces, and communities?
Yeah. So I think, I wouldn't say what message people need as much as to answer the second part of your question is the messenger that people need. And I think I would encourage every single person who ever listens to this to realize that you are a messenger, because there are people you can touch, whatever life path that God's called you to. There are people that only you can touch because of your unique space, your unique history, your unique talents and gifts that have been invested in you by God. And that makes you a messenger. And so, many of us, of course, uh, put it in books. And I've just recently, you probably know, Sid, have released the Soft Life, um, which talks economics and politics in common language that I believe will help our country move in a direction towards prosperity. And so some of us are too right, but I think the most important thing that you want to realize is that the world needs the messenger, and then the message is as a result of having a messenger. So more of us realize and live realizing that we are messengers, then we're able to cooperate with God to really get the message out. Some of it may be what you accomplish, and others look up to you. That message has a huge impact. Some of us, it's actually writing and speaking, which I do because I was blessed with a big mouth. But some people, it's through a project, but it really impacts society. And I think the more of us realize that we are really placed as messengers, the better our world will be, because we really get to influence our sphere of operation and life and movement.
Financial stewardship is an important topic for many people. What biblical principles have guided your approach to wealth creation, investment, and leaving a lasting legacy?
Yeah, what principles have? I think we touched on it at the beginning when we realize that money is a tool to be
Mm,
used. um you know I think it's kind of happening now with cell phones to a certain extent, but
mm,
it's a tool. I remember when I still remember when my dad um uh came out of his car and came into the house with the Motorola. And I remember when he flipped the talking part, but it was like a huge brick like this, right? And he had this huge brick, and it rang. And I remember it's back then. So all the Gen Zs and Gen Xs, you're probably thinking, what is he saying? This guy was making sense all along. What's he talking about? But anyway, so he had this huge brick, and he popped open the front, and when it rang, and then he spoke on this brick of a phone. And I remember that was back then when we were like, whoa, dude is making it. Okay. And he had just become a consultant, I remember at that time, to big mining firms and stuff. But anyway, uh, and at that point, money was cell phones were really a status symbol. And
mm.
I think and I think and yet, of course, we've come to a place now where 10-year-olds are asking you to buy them cell phones, right? I mean,
That's true.
8-year-old nephews and nieces are, if they're like, Uncle, buy me an iPhone, whatever, because it's no longer a status symbol. It's really becoming just a tool. And I think stewardship starts with understanding that about money. And I think I've already said it. If you can move from where money's a status symbol, security symbol, whatever all of that is, could be, to just being a tool, something to be used, because every now and then you need to send a WhatsApp or whatever. In a similar way, how it's happened to cell phones, if you can get there with money, then you'll use it as a good steward. And once again, I've got to say this: the people who care about money don't do well with it, and if they do, then they get messed up, right? um, because because it's very strange that it's only when you're dispassionate that you make good decisions as far as money is concerned. And 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 so I think that, because I've said a lot, I think I'll close it right there. I think that's the thing for stewardship.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll get to my final question, and then I'll get to the comment questions.
Okay.
Lastly, looking ahead, what is your vision for empowering future leaders, entrepreneurs, and believers, and what final word of encouragement would you like to leave with our audience today?
For future leaders, I want to say, and let's talk South Africa and then talk generally. Is where there is no vision, people perish. And and I'll stretch that slightly further and say, where there is no visionary, well, people are doomed. And so I want to encourage leaders that, you know and future and current leaders, that the future really depends on our ability to hold on to that vision, see a future, keep repeating it when nobody hears you. As you know, with most things, when you first say it, they ignore you. When you repeat it, they laugh at you. When you repeat it again, they mock you. And then you stick with it and you repeat it again. And then they jump on as if they always supported you. And that's not the time to tell them, I've been telling you so for a long time. Just be gracious and say, oh, the vision wins, right? It's not for us to win, but it's for that vision to win. And so I think I want to encourage, future leaders, because leadership is literally about, just connecting a future reality to other people. And as you go towards it yourself, you say, let's go, guys, let's go. And it's a very interesting art and science, and uh it's very, very, and it's a lot of fun. And I think my encouragement to them is keep going, because the future depends on leaders who don't give up on a vision and keep pushing themselves and others towards that vision. And I think, usually all they need to hear is keep up the good work. And if you haven't started, then get on with the good work, because it's really valuable. It's really important. I didn't know we're gonna have comment questions, but yeah, let's take them.
Okay,
I
all
did,
right.
I did know. It's only now I see that they're coming up on the screen. Okay, awesome.
Uh, yeah, okay. There's only one here, so this is only okay. This one says Maya, then shawarma, then wraps. This is from that one. Dear Pastor, are there any relief for underprivileged or dysfunctional families and drug addicts?
Are there any relief? How do you understand the question, Sid? On relief.
I guess my understanding of the question is that maybe they're probably asking if you probably have some charity foundation or something like that. That's
Oh,
my
I
understanding
see.
of the question. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
that's your understanding of the question as well.
yeah. I think I kind of agree. I think that's how. So no, I do not currently, and for a simple reason that I'm currently focusing on a certain specific area, and I've got to get that right, because what I see happening is that it will impact even such programs, um, in the country. So, if someone had emailed me with that, then and maybe they can, then I'll see if I can connect them. But personally, we don't, in the calling that we walking on, um, we no, we're not involved in that directly.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Bonsai, and I hope that we can catch up again in the future.
Sid, I am so happy we finally got to do it. So yeah, now that the door's open, it's easier to repeat it. And
Awesome,
it's
man.
been a
Take care.
pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Take care and God bless.
Bless you, man.